Well, this is rather a historical development here. I want to exactly what I'm saying. What does the cause mean in itself? What does it mean to us? And what we can do about it? We must put everything in the context of church, but church understood in this fourfold way. Church, first of all, is grounded in history. It's grounded in history. It's not illusionary. It's not fictional. We stand firm on what has been given to us through the experience of life and of God's action in the world. Our faith is grounded in history. We know more about Ur and Chaldee than Abraham knew. We can name all the pharaohs. We know the prophets. Then, of course, we know the great leaders in the New Testament, above all, John the Baptist. And then, of course, the followers of Jesus, the apostles, and Jesus himself. We are a church grounded in history, but we are contained in mystery. Now, that's very interesting. The church is contained in mystery. That's why it's a gift of God. It's contained in mystery, and you know the mysteries. You know 20 of them whenever you say the rosary. And the greatest mystery of them all, the mystery of God's continual activity in the world, the divine presence of God in this world, shaping, directing history itself. So our church is contained in mystery, profound mystery. God, man, Virgin Mother. But then it's confirmed by miracles. And it's a very interesting thing about miracles. Jesus preached and he healed. He performed miracles. And when he left us, he said, I'll be with you. And then all the things that will follow, the miracles that would follow. The church is continually confirmed in miracles. Miracles happen constantly in the church. They're not a rare event. They're very, very frequent in the church. And they confirm the faith itself. They're important in the lives of the saints, as we shall see. But now the fourth point there, the church is proclaimed by sanctity. The essence of the church is to make people holy, to make the life of Jesus visible and active and tangible, so that the church is proclaimed by sanctity, and that's where we come in with the cause of Father Theodore. So what are we doing? Working for a cause, as we are doing, is not something marginal to the life of the church. It's not anecdotal. We're not concerned just getting stories that we can tell about Theodore. We're concerned about very central and substantial realities. What is life? What's its purpose? How does it unfold? Can we be sure of the presence of God in our lives? How do we proclaim the life of Jesus? How do we sanctify ourselves, our communities, and our world? I like the sentence, we are not making a saint. We don't make saints. We can't make saints, but we can and we must recognize. We recognize the saint. And then we are inspired by the saint. So it's really, the cause of a saint is of the essence of the church. It's what the church is all about. Producing sanctified people. It's why we're here. It's the greatest challenge of our lives. We shall see more about this as we move on. The questions will be answered. Does Father Theodore have a reputation for having practiced the Christian virtues to an heroic degree? I'll return to that term heroic later. It's very important. To a heroic degree. Just what does that mean? What example would his beatification bring to the church? Father Victor this morning spoke very well about what the beatification and canonization of Theodore would mean to the community, to the world, to the church. And that we must not omit what it means to the world. Each saint changes the world, brings more of God into the world, more of justice, more of truth, more of humanity, more of decency. They change the world as they change the church. Thirdly, do people invoke Father Theodore's intercession with God when praying for divine blessings? We must verify that fact. And are we doing everything we can to promote the cause? Is Theodore's reputation for extraordinary virtue founded in fact? The new program, as Father Dominic Papa knows so very well, the process is very precise and very exact and very scientific. And we have to talk about the facts of his life, not what people feel or think or want to be, but what is and what was. And then is there in his writings anything that would present an obstacle? And then did he teach, or did he write anything that is unorthodox? So there are the questions. Then we come to number 4, exactly what is the cult? It's one of the most interesting expressions of church and of faith. I was delighted to get into it. I never thought I would be so deeply involved as I am, and I want to be in the cult. So I had to study more about the cult, and I'm going to give you everything we have here as a nice summary. The cult is not a papal decree, it's not an edict, it's not a declaration of a council. It's a spontaneous expression of the people. It just comes within, and it comes strong. People convinced he's something special. Something special has happened to us because he lived among us. Something special occurs as we study his life. The free recognition of someone who has expressed our faith in an extraordinary way has given us a compelling example of the following of Jesus. That the cult of the saint, it's not worship, it's worship of duty. It's recognition and admission and spontaneous desire to know more, to follow, to imitate, to ask for help. The cult of the saints. It becomes very, very, very strong from the beginning with the martyrs, but it reaches a height of development and then falls into bad time at the time of the Reformation, and then is rescued from the time of Trent until today. The origin of the cult of saints, from the 1st to the 4th century, the age of the martyrs. The overwhelming example of heroism in the face of the most terrible persecution. And this led the spontaneous recognition of the martyrs as being ideal examples of what the gospel is all about. It led to the development of liturgy, prayer at the tomb, then the veneration of relics. That's very important. The body of the martyr was considered to be sacred and have power. And the Christians came to pray at the tomb, to touch the tomb, to receive the power from that holy body. When they were not able to have the body, they would want a relic, a part of the body, which contained that power, that strength. And every year they observed the anniversary of the birth into heaven of the martyr. That gave the beginning to our liturgies, our feasts, our celebrations. And then they gradually took the bodies out of the catacombs and put them under the altars. And then it came to a point in the 10th century where every altar had to have the tomb of the martyr. They have to have the relics of a martyr to consecrate the altar. So the veneration of relics begins in the age of the martyrs, and it continues until this day. And it is not something frivolous or something incidental. Faith, witnessed by the life of this saintly man, this saintly martyr, this saintly woman, her relics, his relics, are holy. I venerate them. that I may receive the power from that life of the holiness in that saint. So the development of liturgies, prayers at the tombs, the special age of Christianity from the 1st to the 5th century, the martyrs must be numbered six. Several of the authors say you must talk at least in terms of 400 or 500,000. Some other authors give it up to 1 million or 2 million, but it's in large figures. They're not small numbers, they're enormous numbers. Then the expansion of the cult. After the age of the martyrs, here's how we developed the confessor. There are no more martyrs. The persecutions are over. The church has triumphed. But these holy men, these holy women, they're like the martyrs. They call us to holiness of life. They have power. They are called the confessors, the witnesses to faith. And this has received a great impulse by the flight into the desert, the so-called flight into the desert fathers and mothers, the Cenobites and the hermits. They gave such extraordinary witness to holiness that they began to be venerated as the martyrs. Their life was of special importance to them, and they are the new saints for veneration and intercession. The fullest expression and expansion of the cult of the saints was from the 10th to the 15th century. Saints were recognized by a large following. Every town wanted a saint, every village, every monastery. And it's in this time, early in the 11th century, when the church blessed the naming of a baby after a saint at baptism. Give a name so that that child will have a patron, will have a model, have someone to pray to, intercede to. That was part of the development of the cult of the saints. Shrines multiplied. Pilgrimage were highly developed. In this age, the cult of the saints contains the history of the church. And the saints had vital power. Well, the most outstanding example is that of St. Francis, and who has influenced the world from the day he was born, and then still does until today. A modern example would be the influence of Teresa of Calcutta, the history of the church, contained in how they translate faith into action. So that was a marvelous period of history from the 10th to the 15th. But then, number 8, the cult goes off track. This is a sad moment in the cult of the saints. The desire for a saint's body increases. They began to steal the body of the saints, or they would steal the relics. Any portion of the body of the saint was considered miraculous. The body of the saints were stolen. The relics were artificially developed. There arose even a great commerce, houses of relics. You name the relic and we'll get it for you. You name the power you want in a relic, we'll put it into it, and we'll sell it to you. The exaggerated, and then above all, in this period from about the 12th century to the 15th century, the lives of saints were as a continuous narration of marvelous things, the great things that are happening, the great miracles, unbelievable powers, and that increased the desire for people to get hold of a relic, hold of the body of a saint. The response of the reformers was, in Luther and Calvin Zwingli, they turned bitterly, and in Luther there's a great contradiction. He was in a terrible thunder and electrical storm and was in danger of death. And he fell to his knees and he prayed to St. Anne, save him, spare him. And if she did, he would enter the monastery and become a monk. Well, he kept his vow, but he turned against the saints bitterly. And this age, in the end of the 16th century, is a very sad one for the church, because the Catholic churches were entered into. They carried out the statues of the saints, smashed their head in public, destroyed their bodies, threw them on a ash heap, including the veneration given to the Blessed Virgin Mary. And it's a sad moment for the Protestant Reformation, a very sad moment, a moment of bitterness, a moment out of control, like a diabolic possession. The more heads we can smash, the better we are. Get them all out of here. It was a sad, and then the Protestant lost the cult of saints. And it's a great, great emptiness in the life of the Protestant church. Today we see them gradually returning one after another to recognize the meaning of the cult of the saints. And what happened then, the church made an on-course correction. From the 13th century onward, the popes worked hard to correct these terrible abuses. Pope Gregory IX, his famous Decretali, the only pope, he declared only a pope can declare a saint. And he can do that only after strict investigation of a holy life. We're not looking for miracles, we're looking for a life of faith. Then Pope Innocent IV, ordinary virtue, here we are. I said I would tell you more about that. It was Innocent IV said, we don't want a holy life, we want a perfect life. We want heroic virtues. St. Thomas is one of them who developed this concept of a heroic virtue. And what do they mean by heroic virtue? It's most important for you and me to know. You're called to heroic virtue. Be you perfect as your Heavenly Father is perfect. What is heroic virtue? Heroic virtue is the day-to-day living of faith in an active response to the gifting of the Spirit. It's being faithful day by day. It's being kind day by day. It's being willing to suffer day by day. It's accepting the trials and the persecutions of life day by day. Heroic doesn't mean sudden and dramatic incident. It means fidelity, faithful, day by day by day by day. That's the heroic virtue. And it's not up and down or good one day, bad another day. It's constant practice, constant desire to achieve perfection. Be you perfect as Heavenly Father is perfect. And that's what they mean by heroic virtue. It doesn't mean sudden miraculous events. It means a constancy in living the life of Jesus. That was Pope Innocent IV. Thomas Aquinas wrote about the heroic virtues. Then Pope Pius V, 1580, creates the Congregation of Rites, which exists even until this day, for the Congregation for the Causes of Saints. Then Pope Urban VIII insisted strict rules that only the Pope can, but it was at this time, 17th century, that canonization is reserved exclusively to the Pope. Earlier, especially in the early years, during the age of the confessors, the 10th to 15th century, the bishops, the people first declared the saint, recognized the saint, and the bishop would do the beatification or canonization, the declaration of the saint to be in heaven. As many errors began to creep in and bishops were making them and making money on making them, the church moved strongly. Take the power away from bishops, that they have no authority. Only the Pope has the authority to do it. And that's the way it is until this day. And then our friend Cardinal Lambertini, the future Benedict XIV, the definitive turn in the development of the cult of saints. He wrote a 5-volume work, De Sorvorum Dei Beatificatione et Beatorum Canonizatione. As you know, Benedict XIV was a friend of St. Paul of the Cross. He was the one who turned to Paul and said, yeah, go ahead, start it out. Gather companions. Get like-minded men. And he initiated the order on his understanding of what Paul was about. So that was important for us. Then the Achille Cardinal Ratti, Pius XI, made new and more rigid rules, but the major revolution comes with John Paul II in 83, when he reviewed the entire process, reorganized it, strengthened it, and again made it very clear. The number 10, the essence of the correction, we're not looking for miracles. We're looking for life. And you must establish first that this is a heroic life. Then we can move. Doesn't matter how many miracles are or not worked. That's not important. The first thing is heroic virtue. And not ordinary virtue or periodic holiness, but a heroic virtue of day by day. And opinions aren't important. Feelings are important. Research and exact reporting is important. There isn't a court in the world that is more demanding than is the cause for the canonization of saints and the trial that follows that. I already explained to you the meaning of the heroic. That's very important. Now we'll talk now a little bit about the significance of Father Theodore's canonization. Victor said much of it this morning. It's so very true. It means much to the whole church. The whole church is ennobled, enriched, blessed, sanctified by the sanctity of one of its holy members. And it means much to our congregation throughout the entire world that one of our men who was the leader of the whole community attained during that time of office and before attained extraordinary heroic virtue. And it's a great blessing indeed upon the congregation. It's what Paul of the Cross would want above all else, to produce holy men. Produce holy men. We're called to extraordinary holiness of life. Theodore will give us the example. For the church in USA, it's another great sign of God's favor and blessing. And it's that we're able, this country that has been often demonized and considered a evil country, does produce saints. And it's very interesting in our day, the saints that are being produced right at this time. Theodore Foley, we put him there. Of course, Michael McGivney, founder of the Knights of Columbus. Patrick Peyton, there are about 9 or 10 miracles being examined with Patrick Peyton. Cardinal Cook, for whom a special mass was said yesterday at St. Patrick's, and his cause is moving very, very rapidly. And then Bishop Sheen, Archbishop Sheen, 7 miracles attributed to him at the present time. I know the postulator very well, Father Andrew Apostoli, whom you see from time to time on EWTN. So we add to the saints of the United States our dear Father Theodore Foley. And of course for us, we can be very proud of the fact that I knew him, I spoke to him, I saw him, he taught me, he heard my confession, he blessed me, he led me. I saw the saint, I recognized the saint. Everything that has been said about Theodore today resonates very well with me. And I was so privileged to have lived with the saint. There are many incidents, and I hope each one of us will write up our own remembrances. I think it would be a very fine thing to collect my impression of Theodore Foley, because what we can do to promote the cult. Study his life, know more about his life. I getting to know so much. I've just studied 400 letters. I have about 1,000 more to do. But when anyone wants to look at my summaries, I have a summary here. But in studying his letters, the thing that comes through to me after 100, 200, 300, 400 letters, constancy. Constancy. Constant in his kindness, constant in his love, constant in his devotion, constant in his vocation, constancy, steadiness, goodness, simplicity. It all comes through. It gets overwhelming when you read letter after letter after letter. So what we can do, personal prayer. I pray every day and every night I pray for his beatification, and I ask for his intercession upon our province and upon our congregation. The restructuring is moving forward. That's a very urgent and very difficult process. I think we are at the turning point of our history as a community. And I think the issue will become more and more whether or not we believe in holiness. And it's the object and purpose of my life to be a holy man. Does Theodore call me to that? Does he call our congregation to that? It's not what we do that is important, it's who we are. who I am each day, each night. I think that's the challenge of Theodore's life. We don't have enough yet of group prayers. In the case of McGivney, they established the McGivney Guild. Cardinal Cook Guild is very flourishing. The Guild is an association of people committed to promote the cause by prayer and by example. So we could think of other ways we can develop the cult. Then we must look at what we can do as a community. And again, I thank Peter and I thank this community for taking the initiative to create the Foley Day, to do what they already have done. And each community should think of how are we going to promote the cause. If, for example, please God, it's not true. But there are communities that haven't said one single prayer. There are communities who thought it was ridiculous. And they said that to my face. Saint, making a saint. What do we need a saint for? We don't have the money for it. Ridiculous. What can we do? And what should we do? What am I called to do as a community? And then in each of our ministries, the retreat house, the parishes, itinerant preachers. I'll draw a conclusion and then I'll say some more things. More conclusion. The cause of Father Theodore Foley is a unique and unexpected development of our congregation. It is an act of God. It has all the marks of a true cultus sanctorum, the true cult of a saint. As I know, it began spontaneously. The first time I heard it was from Spain. And Bishop Santos was one of the people who took the lead. From Spain, they called, "We have seen a saint." A saint has come to us. Then further voices were heard, Japan, Brazil, Korea, finally from our own province. The future of his cause is now in your hands and in mine. So all I wanted to do today is explain how important the cult of a saint is, and that it's up to us. We're not doing anything fanciful or anything miraculous. We're doing what God would want us to do. Recognize his power as active in the life of a great leader among us, Superior General. So that's what it's all about, I believe. Understanding, I want you to understand what the cult of a saint is, and I hope these remarks have made it clear.